When you think about retirement, does it make you anxious? Do you start to think about bad markets or maybe making a big mistake along the way? Well, what you're feeling is completely normal. You see, retirement planning is extremely important, and we know that messing it up could mean a big change in our lives. You've worked your whole life for this moment. You don't want to have to go back to work if you did something wrong. And over the years of helping federal employees with their retirement, we found one of the best things to help people feel less anxious is to understand how the process works. So today we're going to cover the 5 parts of every successful retirement plan, but we're going to do it at a really high level, and in future videos we'll dive deeper into each one of these concepts. So if you're not already subscribed, now is your chance to get on the list so that you can get these videos when they come out. So the very first part of every successful retirement plan is a good income system. When you're working, all of your money comes to you in the form of a paycheck, and so every couple of weeks you get your deposit, so it's easy to keep track of cash flow. But when you're retired, your income becomes truncated. Some of it comes from your FERS annuity pension, some of it comes from Social Security, but the bulk of it, you'll notice for most people, comes from their investment portfolio. For most of our clients, we find that Social Security and FERS covers about half of their retirement expenses, and so the other half has to be made up from the portfolio. Now, your mileage may vary because we are right outside of Washington, D.C. This is an expensive area to live in, so your situation may be a little different. But one thing is almost always true. You're going to have to access your retirement savings at some point, and you need to develop a system for how each one of these is going to fund your retirement income. For instance, when should you take Social Security? How much should you withhold from your FERS pension in terms of taxes? And what kind of investments are going to provide you the income that you need in retirement so that you can keep generating that income? These are just some of the questions that you need to be asking yourself as you start your retirement planning process. For instance, right now there's a great opportunity to be using bonds to generate your retirement income. Now note that I mean individual bonds. I don't mean bond funds like the TSPF fund. Usually, bonds have an inverse relationship to interest rates. So as interest rates go up, the value of the bond goes down. So pools of bonds, where you're not really holding the bond until maturity, are going to be negatively impacted by rising interest rates. Okay, the next required part of your retirement plan is going to be your investment system. Now, this part is actually twofold. The first part is going to be your asset allocation. So how much is appropriate for you to hold in stocks or in bonds, and what kinds of stocks? Should they be growth stocks? Should they be large cap, mid cap, small cap, international? There's various different kinds of components in your investments. For the most part, when you retire, your portfolio's job changes completely. When you're working, its sole purpose is to grow as fast as possible. All you want it to do is to go up. But when you're retired, it's much more beneficial for your portfolio to have a more stable ride, because volatility is not your friend in retirement. So what is the minimum amount of risk that you need to take to keep growing your money so that what you're spending is sustainable and you have future inflation adjusted income as well? If you take a 3% inflation annualized, it'll make $100 pretty much spend like $70 in as little as about 10 years. So that means you're gonna have to have your money still growing fast enough so that you have a full $100 worth of purchasing power a decade later. And the second part of this is what we call your bucket strategy. Now, you might have seen this graphic from some of our other videos, but it's a really good one to help illustrate the point. Once you have your asset allocation from a holistic view, then you need to start going in more granular. For instance, we know that markets are volatile in the short term, so maybe within the next year or so worth of your expenses, your investment allocation for that bucket should be cash and short-term bonds. But then what about 1 to 3 years in the future? What about 5 years? What about 10, 15 years into the future? The further out you go into the future, the more your portfolio is hurt by your spending and by inflation. So it has to be growing fast enough to be able to replenish. So coming up with this mix can be pretty involved, so make sure you're careful and truly understand portfolio construction before you take this on yourself. Also, don't use these for yourself. This is just an example to help illustrate the point. Plus, we have a free newsletter on our website where we go into much greater detail than we do in these videos. If you're interested in that, we'll put a link in the description. Okay, so the next part of your retirement system is going to be your tax system. Everyone knows that they have to pay taxes, but few people know how to use the tax system to their advantage. A good retirement plan is going to have a tax system in place so that you're creating your income systems and your investment systems in the most tax efficient way. So let's look at it together. This is another graphic that I've used before. You may have seen it in some of our other videos, and I really think you should take a screenshot or a picture of this one because it can be really helpful to you. In fact, send it to all your friends, because once you understand the concepts on this slide, it can really be a game changer. When you're retired, you get to pick from where you're generating your retirement income. That means you get to control which kinds of accounts that you want to use to generate that income. You get to pick which investments to do that with, when you're going to take the income, and how to use each one of these different factors. Generating income means generating taxes. So how can you use your wealth in a way that fills up the income brackets the least as possible all throughout your retirement? Because the higher you go, the more chunks of your money is going through this tax filter, and you're gonna have to pay more taxes than maybe you really needed to. For instance, if you take all of your money out of your traditional TSP, for example, all of that money is counted as ordinary income tax. Well, maybe you pushed yourself into a higher bracket. Maybe if you had used part of your traditional TSP and part of your after-tax savings, you might have been able to keep your taxes much lower. So for example, if you have a lot of after-tax dollars, the only thing that's really taxable to you is FERS, which is your pension and annuity, as well as a part of your Social Security. So you could be paying taxes in as little as single-digit tax rates. Wouldn't those be good years to do things like Roth conversions and move your taxable income into a tax-free zone by paying taxes at single digits? Yeah, absolutely. In fact, we do this with many of our clients. And we've seen cases where people have saved tens of thousands, sometimes even into the hundreds of thousands of dollars in extra taxes that they never had to pay throughout the course of their retirement. So using this system is incredibly beneficial, and I encourage you to look into it. Okay, so the next two parts are insurance and estate planning. Now, these two are very different from the previous three in that they don't need as much maintenance as the others. For the most part, you can devise a plan on how to best insure yourself and what legal documents are most appropriate, get them situated, and then just make sure they're still meeting your needs along the way. So with insurance, there's many different kinds, and I'll hit a few of them along the way very briefly. The first one is going to be life insurance. The primary purpose of life insurance is income replacement. When you die, how much of your first pension did your family never receive? Even if you have the survivorship benefit, at most, that's still half of your first pension. And also, Social Security is gonna go away as well. You only get to keep one Social Security. Now, it is the higher Social Security, but it's still a big chunk of change that goes away from your income. The combination of this could be hundreds of thousands of dollars if you die early in retirement that your family never gets to have. And so life insurance helps to fill that gap if you need it. And that's really important. This is if you've not had enough assets accumulated by the time you die that your family is in economic need. That's where insurance plays its role. Now, with life insurance, there are many bells and whistles. You could take care of long-term care insurance as well. You can leave a tax-free inheritance to anybody through life insurance as well. So there's other goals that can be accomplished with insurance. Just be careful who you talk to, because insurance is not the solution for everything. First, start with what you're trying to solve and then see if insurance is the right solution for it. There's a lot of insurance sales agents that will push insurance for every single solution, like retirement and this and that and the other. Guys, understand its purpose. It's a tool. Now, on the topic of long-term care insurance, at the time of this shooting, the federal long-term care insurance program is no longer available. It's been suspended. Why? Because premiums have gotten out of control. The same is true in the private sector. It's extremely expensive to insure for long-term care. And so think about what that means in terms of the cost. How are you covering this cost? If you haven't saved enough in assets, insurance can be a better way to cover this need should you need it. The challenge is sometimes the premiums are so costly that, in fact, with some modeling, it makes sense to not get the insurance, because at least you have a chance of not having a long-term care event. Where with the insurance, for sure, you're gonna have those premium costs all the way. So guys, I think here the lesson to learn is do the modeling, understand the what if scenarios. What if we have a long-term care event at age 80 and it's $85,000 a year for 3 years? What does that do to our economic safety? Now, with estate planning, you at least need to get the basics. So we're talking about something like a will, your power of attorney, make sure it's financial as well, your advanced medical directives. These are things that allow people to be able to help you in a situation where maybe you can't make decisions for yourself. Even if you end up in a hospital, there's no one that can do that unless you've given written permission in the form of documents for them to do so. I know it's a morbid topic, but it's really important that you address this. Also, trusts can sometimes be helpful. Now, the world of trust is a whole profession in itself, but basically it does two things for you. The first is privacy, and the second is control. If you're passing on wealth when you die, consider whether you want to stipulate how your family uses the money after you're gone. Some people want to continue passing on their family stewardship values to their children or whoever their beneficiary is. And so trust can help you have some form of control beyond the grave. Now, they also can help avoid probate and a couple of other things as well. The thing with trusts, I have seen them go horribly wrong. They can be way overcomplicated, and so sometimes these things get set up in the wrong way and they don't get funded properly, and that's where things go wrong. Some people don't even like trusts because of the horror stories that I've heard. In our experience, trusts that are correctly implemented have been brilliant. Now, the ones that have gone wrong are simply because they weren't done right. And if you want to learn how to create the first section, which was the income system, this video on the left-hand side of your screen goes into exactly how that works. So make sure you check that one out. And until next time, stay wise and stay wealthy.